Hey, Graham Lutz here with Formula Athletics. One of the things that we do here is what we call functional movements. We get a lot of questions about what exactly are functional movements, what does that mean in practice. So I wanted to talk a little bit about functional movements, why we do them, what exactly they are, and why they're effective. That term functional gets tossed around a lot. If you go to an LA Fitness or a Gold's Gym, they talk about functional fitness, right? And to them, this is doing bicep curls standing on a Bosu ball. Hardly functional, hardly transferable to real life, right? In fact, isolation movements, like you see on a machine at a big box gym, is the epitome of non-functional. Never in your life do you have to be really good at isolating your bicep and generating a lot of force with just that one muscle. It's not a functional movement, right? So when we talk about functional movements, we're talking about these things that mimic real life. So squats, deadlifts, running, jumping, pushing, pulling, these things that you actually do in life when you have to get a cooler into the back of a truck, when you need to pick up your kids, when you need to get something onto the top shelf or on top of the refrigerator, right? These are real movements, things that you actually have to do in life, okay? So that's one way to think of them. A more scientific option in terms of how to think about functional movements. These are movements that employ universal motor recruitment patterns, okay? Basically, all athletic movement, and from that, really all movement in life, is going to follow a couple of patterns that we then modify to get the desired result, okay? Let's think as an analogy about driving. You have a few patterns that you take basically every time you get in the car, right? Getting in the car and getting started, that's one pattern, right? Then we have another couple patterns that we employ. It might be getting to Peachtree Parkway, getting on 85, getting on 285. There are certain ways to do these things. Once we employ that pattern, then once we get towards the end of that pattern, we start to modify it to do what we need to do, right? Getting to 85 is one thing, but then going to the Mall of Georgia and going to Lenox Mall are going to take two separate modifications from that original pattern, okay? So bring that back to functional movements. What we have are these foundational patterns that we can build on to throw a baseball versus throwing a football versus shooting a basketball shot versus swinging a golf club, right? One of the main components and one of the main patterns is something we call core to extremity force production, okay? Think about a baseball throw, think about a golf swing, think about wrestlers. Basically, any of these movements are going to start at your core, okay? So the big muscles of your hips, your abs, your lower back, your spinal erectors, these big muscles at your center is where movement starts, right? So from there, we then move towards our extremities, right? We use our biggest muscles first, and if you think about throwing a baseball, you are getting to smaller and smaller and smaller muscles, modifying that pattern as we go. So the question then is, how does this actually help us using these functional movements and training these functional movements in the gym? The answer is that injuries can happen anywhere, right? They can happen on the golf course, they can happen getting out of bed, they can happen, all over the place, doing just about anything. So if we can start to develop these movement patterns and patterns of force production that are biomechanically stable and biomechanically advantageous, we significantly reduce the likelihood of an injury, pushing a car of somebody who broke down on the side of the road, right? There are these things that done incorrectly can injure you, and if you learn how to move right, you're way less likely to get injured, and you're way more likely to be able to move and function properly well into old age. So one of the things we talk about here often is that we want, to make people's lives better. We want to make their sport or their chosen activity better, and we want to keep them out of the old folks' home. Okay? The number one reason people get put into an assisted living facility is that they cannot use the toilet themselves, right? So if you think about using the toilet from a functional movement perspective, this is a squat, right? Sitting down, standing up, being able to move through those movement patterns successfully, okay? So that's why we do functional movements. They happen to work really well to make you strong and make you fast and make you lose weight and make you build muscle, right? And more than anything, they're just fun. It's stuff that people enjoy doing, okay? So again, it's Graham Lutz. Thanks so much for listening to me. Let me know if you got any other questions. Kyle and I and Heather will be taking your questions and answering those as they come in. So thanks a lot. Graham Lutz with Formula Athletics.